today we have come together in celebration of the life of Professor Tetsuo Kanno, a great teacher and a great surgeon, and he's been the teacher for many of us who gathered here today. And it would be only fitting that two of his greatest friends are here today to celebrate his life. And one is Professor Samii. Professor Samii needs no introduction. It would be like carrying coal to Newcastle. And Professor Samii has himself been a teacher for many people, and many surgeons owe their career to Professor Samii. Professor Samii has also been the president of the World Federation of Neurosurgeons. So Professor Samii, as I told, needs no introduction at all. But it is my privilege to be here today and request him to give his talk on his educational program over the past 50 years and what he has seen and how he has seen neurosurgery grow and how he has been instrumental in creating many young neurosurgeons to come up in their life.
Today, we are so honored to welcome both the giants of the neurosurgery. And also, I want to tell everybody, because the Professor Tetsuo Kanno, he admired the two giants very much, because I worked him for the more than 30 years, I think. So I think Dr. Kanno is always admire the both of you, and always he talked a lot about you, both of you, I think. And also that he is very much like such kind of the educational course. So this time is he invited Professor Yashajil and also the Robin Sengupta. And also that he opened the Asian Congress. And this is the first gathering pictures. You may know many of them, the Dr. Mishra and Dr. Eka, or so many, at that time, young doctors. This was in 1993. So now they became the big star in the world. And also this was one of the scene, and he received a very nice award from the United States. Maybe our Nelson Oeski is giving the title, I think. He was the founding president of the Asian Congress and also the honorary president of the World Federation of the Neuro Society and emeritus professor of the Fujita Health University. And understanding of the patients. And he is the humanity, and lots of humanity, not only the surgical skill. And he loves the people, he loves the patients all the time. So once again, I thank you very much for your two giant for dedication and short time, the memory of the Professor Kanno. We are very much looking forward to the lectures. Thank you so much.
So first of all, my dear Yoko, thank you very much for organizing such a memorial meeting with memorial lectures to my very close late friend, Dr. Kanno. You know, I know him for a very long time, and he was the most honest neurosurgeon I have ever seen in my life as a colleague. I remember many, many congresses. I remember that even in one of very old congresses that he was talking about cavernous sinus. And I have tried to criticize him and tell him all the risk which is existing in cavernous sinus. And I advise him we should be a little bit careful about that. But believe me, he was the only person that 1 year or 1.5, 2 years ago, officially in the Congress, he has mentioned, I am thankful to Professor Samii, who really tried to criticize me and stop me to do something which was not in benefit of the patient. And I will never forget that I admire him for that. He has at that time tried to give me the right advice. I think such an honest person that has not any eager for himself, and he was always focused to support and help the patient. And on the other side, I have never seen anybody who has suffered his life, create money, educate poor people in the poorest country in the world, to give them the chance to become neurosurgeon and have a high level of neurosurgery. Therefore, I am thankful to you, my dear Yoko, organizing this meeting and giving me also the chance to give a lecture, a memorial lecture. My lecture is only focused to education and nothing else. But in order to be able to educate people, first you have to learn by yourself. And therefore, please let me start and say how the neurosurgery started as I started to do the surgery. We know our pioneers of the neurosurgery of the 20th century by, as you see here, that with Victor Horsley, Krauss, Cushing, and Förster, they had no clinical possibility to support the diagnosis for their surgery. And they started with nothing to create neurosurgery for the future. The first person who has started to give some way for diagnostic was Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, who then discovered the X-ray, so that we say in Germany Röntgen, and in 1895 and in 1901 he has received for physics Nobel Prize. But his discovery didn't help us very much because we couldn't see the brain inside of X-ray. But important was the discovery of Dante, who did the ventriculography with the air study of the ventricular system, later the pulmonary encephalography, and then also the Monitz, who started with the angiography. I had the pleasure, as I started in neurosurgery 64, to see that the Shiro in the United States and Wackenheim in France, they start to use the tomography during the air study. So I have started in Germany with the support of my teacher at that time, Professor Schurman, to introduce the pulmonary encephalography for a better diagnostic. And you can see, I have, after a short time, I have seen the encephalography is limited only for patient who has not increased intracranial pressure. And then I had an idea, why not? I can make a borehole and I can decrease with the ventricular drainage, decrease the brain pressure, and then I can give do the encephalography without being anxious to have a herniation. So that I have inaugurated combined ventricular lumbar pulmonary encephalography, which I published in 1968. And with this technique, I was able even to expose the processes in the posterior fossa. The picture you see, this is a historical picture in the history of medicine that for the first time I was able to do after ventriculography to do an encephalography, which I could reach first ventricle, but I couldn't go through the aqueduct to the third ventricle. And then I give from lateral ventricle air study, and we have seen a membrane in aqueduct which has created then this hydrocephalus. That was really for me an unbelievable pleasure to find out in this case, to do the shunt in this case and help the patient. And I went through the encephalotomography to all structures, 800 cases I have done encephalotomography. And that was also, I have discovered many syndromes which we have not had before. We could expose every area with millimeter exposure. You can see this picture is looking like a MRI, which I have produced at that time. Finally, I published a book about pulmonary encephalography, and that was my thesis to become professor in neurosurgery. Anyway, as computer tomography came and MRI was, of course, the pulmonary encephalography not anymore necessary, and this development was absolutely a wonderful, I would say, future development of our field. I was in the same time as I did this encephalography, I tried to use microscope, but we have seen that Jacobson and Donaghy, they started experimentally to do this microsurgery, and they have recommended the neurosurgeon should also use the microscope. I was privileged that in 1966, I started with microsurgery at the University of Mainz. And then in my time, these gentlemen you see in this picture were in the same time, they have also started around the world, but each of them in a special field. You can see here Dr. Yaşargil and then here Jolly Direct. They were very interested in the vascular, and Kursi and Rand in CP, well, Asmal is in CP angle, and Sugita was the next generation. He just started also with for vascular, Hardy, pituitary, and Janetta in vascular decompression. I have seen that the peripheral nerve, nobody was interested in that, and only the hand surgeon, Michon, 1964, Smith, plastic surgeon, and Milesi, plastic surgeon, they started to use the microscope for peripheral nerve. And I personally, as I met the Milesi, and then I started already 67, I started with the microsurgery of peripheral nerve. My first publication came out in 69. And then I have seen we can also make a better surgery for peripheral nerve. If we use microscope, we can divide the peripheral nerve in smaller anatomical units, and then we can make a better cohabitation and anastomosis of the fascicles. And we have done in the same time seen that with that technique, we can, with nerve grafting, we can make breach a lot of nerve defects with a fantastic results. And you have seen about the nerve grafting, we have published of Milesi 67 and I 69. The first, this is publication from neurosurgical point of view. I did a lot of experimental work for peripheral nerve. I cannot go in this lecture, but finally classification of different types of this thing, and using the sural graft for breaching the nerve, for example, in this ulnar lesion, and with fantastic result. And this stimulated me to jump to the brachial plexus and try to make the nerve transfers with different nerves and have a wonderful and good results, as you can see here. I have inaugurated also the hypoglossal musculocutaneous anastomosis already 82, as you see, with a wonderful, even later in the root avulsion in the lumbosacral region in this patient, I have done femoral anastomosis, would use the normal branches of the femoral nerve from the contralateral side, and reinnervated the quadriceps from the other side. You can see this girl was able then to use the quadriceps after this surgery. Then, of course, I started to use the microsurgery for replantation of extremities, because in this replantation, I could suture the arteries together on the microscope very well. At the same time, the nerves, or later here, in 71, even in one of the congress on macrosurgical course I gave in Tehran, it is already 50 years ago, and I did at that time this replantation of this hand, as you see here. And the same here with such a cases. There are the cases we have done in the early 70s, but I have seen that there are many possibilities in the human body to the application of nerve grafting. This is, for example, for ophthalmic nerve, which was destroyed by trigeminous trauma. And here I used an occipital major and an anastomose with the ophthalmic nerve in 69. In 70s, I reconstruct the alveolar mandibular nerve after removal of adamantinoma with my maxill surgeon. But more than that was my interest in the facial nerve in all areas, particularly also in acoustic neurinoma, to use the nerve grafting in CP angle. As you see here, wonderful result we have achieved. And then I have modified the dot operation with the intracranial, extracranial, with the intracranial, intratemporal grafting. This is the first case I have done in 1975, and that is the result which I achieved in the first case I have done this. That is another case for reconstruction of trigeminal nerve as well as facial nerve, as you can see here with the result. In 1959, Gardner has done the first vascular decompression in brain, and Janetta followed him, and in 67, he has started to do that. And he was one of my best friends in the world, and we worked and talked together. And I started 71, also 50 years ago, with the vascular decompression. And that was the reason why we believe that this vascular decompression is very important. Reconstruction is very important. So that Janetta and myself organized an international congress on 1980 in order to transfer our knowledge to all other neurosurgeons around the world. And 81, we have published a book. And the knowledge we have received with the cranial nerves, it has motivated me for the skull-based surgery. The word skull-based surgery was not existing. And that was something that we knew from the history, that some pioneers of different fields, they have done some special approaches to skull-based, but limitation was their own anatomical field that they were working, but not complete. And you can see, when you see them in the literature, neurosurgery, Krause and Balance and Cushing, and every of them have done some little approaches to the skull base. The same is that for maxillofacial surgery. But the point was, what I have seen in my life in the 60s, late 60s, that we need interdisciplinary cooperation. From one side, for the anterior skull base and the paranasal sinuses, and from the, I don't know what is this. I'm sorry, here's something. Yeah, and to anterior fossa to the paranasal sinuses and the orbit with all the cranial nerves, and also the olfactory nerve, optic nerve. On the other side, the petrous bone with the cochlear and vestibular as well facial nerve, and approaches to the middle fossa and to the posterior fossa. And therefore, the philosophy of the philosophy was to create a team for skull base. That is what I have done in 1970 at the University of Mainz. And I convinced also my teacher, Professor Sherman, and then my friend, late friend Raf from ENT, and Hausamen and Schönemann, maxillofacial surgeon. And the philosophy was how we can overcome the barrier between all this specialty. And that was the, I would say, major point of our philosophy, how to do it from different fields of the surgery. I have, after having more than 10 years experiences, then I have started to organize the first course for skull-based surgery at the, in Hanover. And you can see here the Professor Lang, the most important anatomist, and here Professor Doraf and myself. And this is the first ever group of student to learn the scalp-based surgery. They have been all director and professor from different countries in Europe who came then to participate in this course, in which I started to go through the whole skull and give our experiences about the scalp-based surgery in any part of the skull base. In 81, Graf and myself, we have written the surgery of the skull base. You can see here is written an interdisciplinary approach with with a chapter of him. And this was the way that I believe we have to continue and organize. Then in Montpellier in 1980, I have organized this group as an international skull-based study group. You can see I have with me here Professor Rapichon, one of the genie of the anatomy, neuroanatomy. That is my late friend, Professor Graf, who worked with me over 40 years together. Here also my honored teacher, Professor Sherman. And every 2 years, we started to organize congresses for showing our results of the skull base from 82 to 90. And finally, I have tried to convince all my friends who came to me and we had connection with them to organize a society in every country for a skull base. And in Germany, I have founded the skull base society, and then as far as I saw that my colleagues from 55 countries, they have at least started either society or a study group, then I have decided to organize the first World Congress of skull-based surgery with 55 countries and with in 1992 and 850 presentation. 1 week from Monday to Saturday was this Congress. You can see these gentlemen all have been representative of their countries for skull base. And every 4 years we have in a different state done this meeting that the next one is was this year. There's also 8th one, but it is postponed for the next March in Brazil. The way how I have tried to educate people around the world was that different way. One way was attending the congresses and give many lectures. The other way, I went to many countries and stay at least 2 days. And every day I give several lectures. Here you can an example of my course in France in Toulouse in 1973. Professor Lazorde has invited me, and he has invited all the French young people to come and stay 2 days with me. And they have registered all my 12 lectures I gave through 2 weeks about all the fields, and Dr. Lazorde and Lagaric then published 1 year later all my materials I had in French language and distributed into the France. In the same year, 1973, I was asked by Scoville for American neurosurgeon for education of the postgraduate American education, and invited me as only foreigner for this course. And I had to give several lectures about microsurgery, whatever I have done. And here, this is a historical picture. You can see here Scoville and myself, and behind me, standing here at that time, the most prestigious neurosurgeon of United States. You can see here Charlie Wilson, the teacher of Spätzler and Martin, and here Professor Janetta, and then you can see the Jules Hardy here, and Joe Ranzahov, who was in New York, and he asked me to write a big chapter in his book, new book about modern aspect of neurosurgery. And so that that was Professor Scoville, And this was the starting also my activity. And then I was, of course, every year in all meetings around the world and giving lecture and lecture and lecture. And finally, I have tried to do these 2 days meeting in many countries. This is an example for, I must say, believe me, more than 50 or 60 countries I have done. It is 2 days lecture every day, at least 6 lectures and 12 lectures. That is in Bangladesh. You see, I have here the dress of the Bangladesh and my host is there, and they have recorded, and they had 12 videos recorder, and they had at that time only 100 neurosurgeons, and all 100 neurosurgeons had received these records. They could then see every weekend at home all these lecture I gave at that time. In 1981, of course, 2 major countries was in my focus. One was India, the other was China. The India, I think all my colleagues, they can remember the first, India had at that time 200 neurosurgeons, China also, not more. And here you can see me with Sangupta, who was a man who really at that time tried to organize the meeting, asked me, Prof Samii, I ask you please give all your knowledge to my people in India, and we organize in Delhi a course 1 week. And I have asked also Professor Tisdale, who was really an expert in the pituitary, and I said he should join me, and we have done spent the whole week in Delhi. I remember that I have operated many cases in during the course, and the Dr. Basan Misra was at that time, I think, was chief resident in the department, and he was assisting me many of these cases. And of course, Dr. Turel and all these more than 100 of Indian neurosurgeons who are now the senior neurosurgeon of India, they have participated this course. And later, of course, they came to me, and I was many time in India and gave another courses. And I was so happy to see that not only neurosurgery, also scalp surgery has become in India highest level. And it is always for me pleasure to be there and see all my colleagues in a fantastic position, and also enormous quality of neurosurgery. In Beijing, I have started, of course, in Shanghai Hospital with my colleagues, very loved colleagues, Professor Ling Feng. And this, what you see, this is my first group in Beijing that I have educated. They are now all senior neurosurgeons, and then in Beijing was interesting that we organized the courses, and Professor Ling Feng was very strong to convince the politicians for the development of neurosurgery in the country. And here you can see in Hanover, that is the Lord Mayor of Hanover, and they are the authorities of the China Beijing, that is director of the healthcare, and we have signed then a document that I become the president of the China INI in Beijing with a professor at the Capital University. And with this signature, then I had officially a position in China to educate the people in China. But Dr. Ling Feng tried to convince all the politicians for extending our activity. And you can see that was a meeting that is the Minister of Healthcare, and they are all authorities of the Beijing and also China. And with a great meeting, I had to give a lecture, and they tried to honor me for my personal commitment there. But important was that we had a plan, and the plan that I discussed with the president of the minister president, and I discussed with the Lord Mayor of Beijing here, Dr. Wang, who become now one of the 7 important patients. The Prime Minister Wen Jiabao invited me to talk about this project, and I have finally convinced them. That was a lunch in Forbidden City, convinced them, and they have accepted also to organize a central large hospital like as China INI, and we started to educate not only in Beijing but all Chinese neurosurgeon with many courses in Beijing. And here you can see I am here demonstrating and presenting the faculties here. You see here Professor Brochi and Professor Rabichon, Armando Basso, Shu, Di Rocco, and here you can see then Oi and my late friend Kanno here, and Martin, then here that here is the Professor Yoko Kato, as you see here, was from beginning. Yoko Kato was also a part of this education, and the same also the Kanno. And and here you see the Valavan is one of the really absolutely toppest neuroradiologists around the world. Here again, you see my late friend here, Kanno, and also here the Yoko Kato and the other faculty members. And this is the participants of Chinese participant in the first, which was started 2004, as you see, and then followed every year with several courses. And we have celebrated the 10 years courses here with all these, they were displayed for the 10 years anniversary. But important was, the highlight was, as the government has completely all agreed to make the cornerstone for the China INI at the Capital University. That is the ceremony, and you can see here, I asked our Chancellor Schroeder to come for this highlight, and you can see that I gave a talk here, and then that is Chancellor Schroeder and all the authorities of the China who made the cornerstone for the China INI, and everybody was happy, but the China, and then in the 2017, as you see here, then I had the pleasure to inaugurate this with 2 really very difficult life surgery, which was observed by more than 10,000 neurosurgeons via telecommunications system. And that is Professor Ling Peng introducing, and that is myself. That was 17 December 2018. You can see here that we make the inauguration with life surgery. I have done the first life surgery and this dream to have such a China INI was realized. That is the reality, that in this center, now at that time we have been perhaps 25 people, now around 100 doctors are working in this center, and we are operating there every day about 40 cases in about 14 operating theaters. And additionally, we have created a China INI Union, and we have connected 27 states with Beijing and with our China INI, and they are growing also unbelievable, and they are giving data that I am impressed about the number of the data we are creating in China. In Tehran, we have done also similar program, and started with it in 2011. We have done the cornerstone here 3 years later, and this is, the building is finished, but unfortunately after the political situation between United States and Iran, the center is not open. In 1997, as I became the president of the World Federation, of course, I felt a great honor, but I saw the obligation and also my duty for the people, and my enormous, I would say, attention was what can I do make neurosurgery better for everybody around the world? And of course, when the future perspective of neurosurgery was in my heart, and I have realized we have two challenges for the coming generation. The one was, of course, that in two different directions. One direction was application of high technologies to improve diagnostic and surgical results. Also, we needed highest development of neurosurgery to open the border of the diagnostic and also surgery, and elevate in the same time basic standard for developing country. There are two different directions. And of course, for the high technology, the financial, we know that financial limitation was therefore not possible to do it everywhere. But we know that the high technology is fundamental for advancement in neurosurgery. And finally, I have succeeded to organize the created Center of Excellency, the INI in Hanover, with, believe me, the highest technology was existing at that time, 2000, in the world. Particularly 3 Tesla MRI was the first MRI, 3 Tesla MRI, which we included here. And therefore we could start with the brain mapping. We make a big study about the brain mapping and trying to extend our knowledge about the brain. And we have organized also the computer graphic workstation that our resident and all colleagues and visitors, they could then plan the, have all the data with the diagnostic and plan the operation and navigation and so for the next day operation. And as we had this technology, of course, we become, we had the possibility to operate cases that never ever we could try to do it. I show you only 1 or 2 cases, not more. This is a thalamic, intracerebral thalamic tumor, which after brain mapping, we have seen that surrounded by the pyramidal system. And of course, a direct approach would not be possible here. And finally, I have developed then, by the way, the transsulcal approach for the deep-seated tumor. And in this case, I have then decided then to use in this case, which not from the homolateral side, to come from contralateral side and remove this tumor, because this part was open, was not any structure there. And you can see that I could remove this tumor wonderful because of having this brain matting introducing the brain. This is a patient who had paralysis and recovered very well of the surgery. For developing countries that they don't have these things, I have developed another possibility. This is a case which I operated almost 35 years ago. I used a transsulcal approach, but we needed precisely to reach such a sulcus as you see. And in this case, we had at that time no computers for navigations at all. And then I said, I use the strotactic frame, which also existing in many developing countries. And I said, if I have the strotactic frame, I can then exactly find the sulcus where I have to enter into the sulcus. And this is what I have done. And with also sonography, I could control again. And then you see, this is the sulcus we have seen in MRI. That is 35 years ago. And here you can see that we expose this sulcus, and finally we expose this cavernoma and remove it. And that was what I showed in the developing country. I said, you can use also this way. And the other thing which really impressed me in the recent 10 to 15 years is the displacing of the centers, of the eloquent centers. For example, in this case, look at the Broca, which normally is in frontal, lower frontal gyrus, was placed in this case in the lower temporal gyrus. And you cannot imagine, otherwise on the left side, never ever I would do a surgery when the patient had no speech problem. This patient spoke then 5 languages. Finally, I have operated this case, as you can see, removed, but I have preserved this center, which was in the temporal, caudal temporal area, and the patient was, after surgery, after complete removal, still is able to talk in all 5 languages. So creation of center of excellency was, of course, we have achieved, but more problem was how we can elevate the basic standard around the world. That was, of course, without financial support, was almost impossible. We have at that time found that in many countries in Africa, there is not one single neurosurgeon. And therefore, as I was the president of the World Federation, I asked my second vice president to make evaluation. How is the situation? Professor Khamlichi was the first that within short time gave me the statistic that we have in Sub-Sahara only 79 neurosurgeons. And that was the reason that we have done. I have tried to create the foundation and done basic instrumental set and operative microscope and forum of young neurosurgeons. That was one of my very important decisions I did as the world president. And this vast foundation should support for developing countries to educate people. But my idea was, because I was convinced that in Morocco, when I had communication with Professor Khamlichi, that they have achieved certain standard that they can educate people in Africa. He has accepted, and you see here, that is the president of the university, and I gave the document that that Rabat become officially reference center for education of African countries, medical doctors. And that is the documents that I have hand over to the president. These has been all people, as you see, from different countries have been all be educated. And one of those is Dr. Nasiro, who went to Sokoto. Sokoto, 80 million people, no neurosurgeon. But Nasiro has started there and created a fantastic department. All others the same, but only as example, he was able to create this center, and now he has about 6 associates and has every time 5 residents, and they are now supporting 80 million people in the area and operating 2,000 to 3,000 cases every day. But Dr. Khamlichi has started to continue to educate these people, even they have finished there and went home, and say, we have to give them more information about the development every year. Really, the work of Abdeslam Khamlichi is unbelievable, and this is unique in the history of Africa. I cannot talk too much about that, but I could speak about 1 hour about Khamlichi, what he has done. But anyway, he and his team organized every month. I was attending all these meetings and giving lecture. And I thank Professor Khamlichi for his really beginning, because that was an enormous start. You cannot imagine how much work was that he could get permission from university, from government, that the people can come and then have all the opportunity to be educated, like the Moroccan people in this department. But of course, we have for these people who have done finished, we had the basic cranial and spinal set microscope, and but I was not happy in 10 years later, 2009, that Professor Khamlichi gave me a statistic that from 79 cases, we have only 142, despite of our effort. And that was the reason I was criticized the World Federation in Administrative Council, and they have then decided to say, good, Professor Samii, you are interested in Africa, you are our ambassador, try to do what you can. And that as ambassador, of course, I believe that we need more training center and more candidate. And I said the time is running and we have to make more speed in education of the people. And therefore I have the idea, we will then create a situation to educate 100 African neurosurgeon, African young people as educated as neurosurgeon in Sub-Sahara, and for 5 and 6 years. And I have accepted the regulation of the budgets, and my team of the committee of the Africa 100 has been established in Nairobi in Kenya, which was a very historical meeting, as you see here. Professor Khamlichi, you can see here, and also Professor Ling Feng, you can see, and of course the Qureshi, the Professor Qureshi, who is now the president of the African Association. And in this meeting, we have also achieved to start with the vision of the Africa 100, and of course another point which was also creation of CAANS, which I am very happy and proud of that. And first step was of course the committee, and the committee has been selected from the different part of Africa, and they have done started in 2013 with the education. And now we have a really great number of education of the people. And if you look at this land card, and you see we are working, the 45 countries in Africa has been united together, and they are helping us. And my dream in the next years, I hope I am still alive, my dream is to create as a plan in Africa, as in Africa, that I am convinced Africa is the coming continent in the world, and one day the African people must be proud that they have developed themselves, the Africa, to the best continent in the world. I am sure, hand in hand, we will then organize more qualified African young people in Africa, and we should not try to have the brain drain. We have to do everything to have a brain gain in Africa. Africa can only be developed by African people. At this point, I would want to close my lecture and thank all of you for listening, and thank to you for inviting me for this lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Samii. I think it was an excellent speech, and we've seen the growth of neurosurgery along with you, and we've seen such fantastic work being done with your help in China, in India, in Bangladesh, and now in Africa. And I think you've given a bird's eye view of what has been the development in neurosurgery over the last 5 decades. Professor Kato, you have anything to say?
Oh, it's wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Madjid. And I don't know, always you encourage us. Maybe you have such kind of the special power, maybe, I think. maybe Professor Kanno, that he was so pleased with the leadership, and also that's why the Professor Kanno admired you a lot. Anyway, thank you so much for a wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
I thank you also again, but you must imagine I couldn't go to all the details of education which I have done in all. I brought only some examples. I didn't talk anything about Latin America. Then Latin America, from Costa Rica to Santiago to Chile, I have thousands of people educated, and I am honored member of all these countries, and they have really, I have fantastic people there. It is something that I must say make me so happy to see that we have together tried to develop, because as I was developing by myself, it was at that time only America and Europe, and all other continents was not counted in the development for us having any voice for for the world activities. Believe me, this is my and that was something that was in my heart, that to say the whole world, all human beings are the same. There is no difference between any people in any countries, and the intelligence of the human being is distributed in all the world in the same way. And therefore, my personal idea is still why I am now insisting to create an Africa INI, because I know this will be like in Beijing, that the Beijing, China, now how they have developed, you know. Then we can also in Africa then have a center that African are educated by African people in Africa. Not they don't need to go to Europe, to Germany, to America, and then stay there, you know, and don't go back, you know. And this is not the way of the development. I'm sorry to say that, but please forgive me. I am now a little bit emotional. I can not control myself at the moment, because we are talking about something which is essential for the future of the world, I must say. It is not only neurosurgery, it is for future of the world, it is essential. If we don't do that now, we will destroy the entire world, and we will have only war, we will have only problems and hunger, and that is the reason why we have to work on that. Transfer of knowledge to other countries is the most important things which existing at the moment in the world. The other things, money and things, they doesn't work at all. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Professor Samii, especially for your Chinese INI. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So now let's give time to Professor Khamlichi. Just as Professor Samii introduced Khamlichi a lot already in his presentation, and Professor Khamlichi is one of the pioneers of the African neurosurgery. Please, Professor.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Now I have to share my my presentation. Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. Thank you, my dear friend Yuko, and all the organizing committee for asking me to participate in this first series of memorial lecture in honor of our late friend, Professor Tetsuo Kanno. I'm, of course, very happy to participate, but at the same time, I'm quite embarrassed to speak just after Professor Madjid Samii, who is really, I think, the first person worldwide who participated, who educated, and who is dedicated to education of neurosurgeons worldwide. You have heard all what he did, including what he did for Africa. So I'm happy, but at the same time, as said, I am embarrassed because I can, what can I add? Maybe what can I add is just to say how we tried to follow what he did worldwide and what he tried to start for us in Africa. As this lecture, of course, is dedicated to late Professor Kanno, allow me to say some word about him and about our friendship first. I knew Professor Kanno since more than 2 decades. Exactly, I participated in the meeting he organized, the ICNS meeting, and then visited him in Nagoya in his department in 2002. And he visited Africa, he visited Rabat many times, participated in the courses organized in the WFNS Rabat Training Center. And you see him here when we had, my wife and myself, the honor to invite him at home and to have a dinner with also our beloved Professor Yuko Kanto. We participated in many meetings. We shared many scientific sessions. We also shared many business meetings at the level of the WFNS, especially the exciting time of the presidency of Professor Madjid Samii at that time on the Federation. Professor Kanno contributed a lot to the education and training of young neurosurgeons worldwide, especially in developing countries. He had many initiatives for these young neurosurgeons. The first one was to invite them to the scientific meeting he was organized, starting with the Asian Congress of Neurosurgeons. He created in 1993 in Nagoya, and then this society organized a congress every 2 years in different Asian countries. And in each meeting, he has in habit to invite 100 young neurosurgeons from developing countries, free of charge, and many of them were from Africa. He sponsored them, of course, to other meetings, and I had the pleasure and honor to attend many of these meetings. And I witnessed directly how Professor Kanno was taking care personally from these young doctors, introducing them to the invited lecturers, pushing them to ask questions, and in one word, how we was personally worried to see these young doctors improving their knowledge and improving their training in neurosurgery. And the second initiative he tried also for the young neurosurgeons worldwide is to provide them a short period fellowship in his department, and then also to travel over the world to participate in the meeting and courses as a visiting professor. You see him here receiving the award from the Muhammad V University of Rabat. And I was really honored to hand him this award. I think all of us were touched by his disponibility, by his dedication, and also by his humanitarian qualities. So the loss of Professor Kanno is really great for all of us worldwide. And I would like just to say, may his soul rest in peace. Now I come back to my lecture, and I have chosen to have this lecture about the neurosurgical training challenges in Africa. You have already heard how Professor Samii supported education in Africa. And we will see in this lecture also some of the details of his support. I think you understand that the way to create an efficient training for young neurosurgeons in Africa wasn't an easy task. And by chance, I found in my way, trying to do that, Professor Madjid Samii and Professor Kanno. Professor Samii has already said to us how he contributed, and I would like to add that he was the main supporter for me in all this program in Africa. To understand maybe the delay of neurosurgery in Africa, it's important, I think, to mention the recent tumultuous history of Africa. You know, during centuries, Africa was unfortunately in a very deep slump. And this continent woke up at the beginning of the last century, completely colonized by the European powers. And the modern neurosurgery was introduced in some African countries during this colonial period. But unfortunately, no single native African neurosurgeons was trained during this period. And our late Lawrence Levy, a British neurosurgeon, who started practicing neurosurgery in Africa very earlier in 1956, was saying in 1955 that there were in Africa no more than 20 neurosurgeons, and almost all of them were foreigner and European neurosurgeons. At the independence of African countries in 50, 60, they have been two systems of training which were developed. Very limited number of African countries, especially the North African countries and South Africa, set up very quickly a national training program to train their young doctors in neurosurgery. But unfortunately, the majority of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they followed the training outside Africa to try to have the pioneer, the first neurosurgeons in the country. And I think that these two systems of training, which are completely different, ended at the end of the last century to a very unbalanced and unequal evolution of neurosurgery in Africa. As you see in this first survey, we have conducted between 1996 and 1998, and you see that at that time, among all the 565 neurosurgeons we had in the continent, almost the majority, 86%, were in North African countries and South Africa. And as Professor Samii mentioned, in all the continent, for 615 million people, we had 79 neurosurgeons, one neurosurgeon for 8 million inhabitants, almost to say that there have been no neurosurgery and 14 countries without any neurosurgeon. At that time, I took the opportunity as a second vice president of the WFNS in my first report to the Administrative Council to put in the report these figures, these alarming figures, and to describe the situation and the priority of African neurosurgery at that time, to point out the importance of the national training programs, and also to emphasize how the training outside Africa, especially in Europe and North America, how this training was encouraging the brain drain of the first neurosurgeons, African neurosurgeons who were trained at that time. And by, I think, a great chance for me and for Africa, as a president of the federation at that time, Professor Samii has already prepared a plan to develop, to try to develop, as he said, neurosurgery worldwide by taking two important initiatives. The first time was the creation of a WFNS Foundation, because without material, without money support, it's difficult to encourage training worldwide. And this, I think, this foundation is one, I mean, historically is the most important project at the level of the federation, and also at the level all over the world regarding the education and training in neurosurgery. And the second initiative was to contact many some medical companies to create biomedical equipment at a low price. The set of instruments all of you know today, operating microscope, and then others, bipolar coagulation, endoscope, drills, and so on, dedicated to the developing countries. And with the presentation of this report regarding Africa, Professor Samii convinced the Administrative Council of the Federation that it was necessary to become with the third initiative, the accreditation of regional training centers to train young African neurosurgeons in their continent, in their environment, and to avoid, of course, the brain drain of these trained neurosurgeons outside the continent. And in 2002, the Department of Neurosurgery at Mohammed V University in Rabat was accredited as a WFNS Rabat Reference Center for training young African neurosurgeons, and the first trainee started in this center in March 2002. So some years later, Professor Samii already spoke on that. Some years later, Professor Samii was nominated as ambassador of the WFNS in Africa. And then again, with this second responsibility, he came with a second project, with another project, Africa 100 in 2013. And of course, other regional training centers were necessary to be created and accept more trainees. And so we had the regional center, training center in Dakar, in Algiers, and in Nairobi, to increase, of course, the number of the trainees coming from Africa 100 and coming also from the first project, which was also created by Professor Samii in 2002. So what are the current training systems in Africa? We have many, as already you have heard. We have the training outside Africa, which has, I think, just an historical importance because he provided some African countries with the first neurosurgeons, with the pioneer African neurosurgeons. We have the local and national training system, which is, of course, the most important one with many advantages, and which is the one recognized worldwide in different countries of the world to train neurosurgeons. We have the WFNS accredited regional training centers, which are almost no different from the national training centers. We have still some other important programs in Africa. The multinational regional training system, which associate many countries in the same program with the same exam, with the same diploma. And this training system exists in West African country under the umbrella of the West African College of Surgeons, and the second one in East African region also under the umbrella of the College of Surgeons of East, Central, and South African region. And there is some other training program, like, for example, this one I called an hybrid training system because it's a system, a training system created, or a training program created by foreigner neurosurgeons, generally from Europe or North America, in an African country. And we have an example in Ethiopia, the Addis Ababa program, supported by Auckland University in Norway. We have also one in Uganda, the Kampala program, supported by the Duke University in North America. I tried to compare the advantages and disadvantages of this different training program. Training outside the continent, training this multinational regional training program, the local program with the teachers from foreign countries, the WFNS accredited regional training system, and of course, the local and national training system. Each one has advantages and disadvantages. And those of you who are interested to have details on all this program, they can see that in the book I edited 2 years ago, Emerging Neurosurgery in Africa, and you have it with this link free of charge. Now, what are the challenges of these national training centers in Africa? Of course, the most important one in many places is still the shortage in human resources, either in academic teaching staff, neurosurgeon, and also in the hospitals in the multidisciplinary teams. The second, of course, is the difficulty to have a written program, a written curricula, which is important, of course, to be followed by the trainees in these different programs. And you see here the writing curricula, which was edited by the medical school in Rabat, and which is followed by all the trainees, including, of course, the African trainees coming from sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the reason why it was necessary to sign a cooperation agreement between the university and the WFNS to be sure that all these trainees are integrated in the same national residency program as the Moroccan trainees, with the same exams, with the same program, and with the same diploma. As you see here, this is the diploma they had after their being graduated, and another certificate which they get from the WFNS also as follow of this program of the WFNS. The other challenges are, of course, the development of the neurosurgical subspecialties, vascular, pediatric, functional neurosurgery, to complete the training of these young neurosurgeons. Some centers have also not yet developed the neighboring specialties like neuroradiology, neuroanesthesiology, neuropathology, and many others. Sometimes the lack of basic research in neurosciences in the majority of African university hospitals. And this is, of course, the reason I think Professor Madjid Samii is proposing to have an INI in Africa, to have a great center developed where young African doctors can be trained in all these aspects, and where also they can develop that later on in their different developing in different countries. And because today all these challenges can have some negative impact on the level of the training of these young neurosurgeons. Unfortunately, there is solution to overcome these challenges by developing the exchanges to encourage additional training in more developed center for all these young trainees, and it can be organized by the university, by the hospital, or by the department itself to have a 6 month to 1 year or more additional training. And this was mandatory at the medical Fifth University of Rabat since we started the training in neurosurgery in 1968 until 1996. Today, it's not mandatory, but it's encouraged for all these young trainees, including the trainees coming from sub-Saharan African countries and enrolled in the WFNS Rabat Training Center. The second way also to overcome these difficulties is the organization of local continual medical educations with workshops and courses. And you see, the first WFNS course was organized in Rabat in 1991. And it was followed after by many courses. And this is the reason why in this cooperation agreement signed with the WFNS and the university, the CMA was a kind of obligation for the center to organize yearly courses and workshops. And you see these courses, Professor Samii already has shown one of these pictures of these courses. You see that this, and it's a great occasion to gather the African neurosurgeons with the leaders and experts of neurosurgery worldwide from all continents. And you see all of them led every time by Professor Samii, who is here, who is participating in these courses, who is giving lectures, but also advising the young neurosurgeon, advising the senior neurosurgeon how to develop neurosurgery and how to gather themselves. And it was thanks to him. During this meeting, he has shown a nice picture in Nairobi. The African neurosurgeons succeeded to create a continental association of African neurosurgeons, gathering all African neurosurgeons in this association. And you see that during 15 years, at least 47 courses and workshops we organize it in the WFNS Rabat Training Center. Of course, as Professor Samii said, it needs a financial support to develop exchanges with other centers. It needs financial support to create a continuing medical educations with courses and workshops. And you know, in many African universities and hospitals, there is no special budget as you find maybe in developed countries, in Europe, in Japan, in North America. It's the duty of the pioneer neurosurgeons to find a solution. And I would like to tell you that in our place also, quite earlier, in 1989, we created the foundation, Hassan II Foundation for Prevention and Cure of Nervous System Diseases, to help and support development of neurosurgery in the country. And we started to collect funds. And for example, thanks to this foundation, we succeeded to have our first MRI in the country in 1992. We succeeded to promote neurosurgery in the country based on the promotion of public health problems in neurosurgery, very important in developing countries. If you want the government, if you want the politician to hear you, you have to speak on the public health problems in your specialty. And we succeeded to do that thanks to the foundation we have created. Why? Because we have in the foundation, in addition to the medical doctors and neurosurgeons, we have no doctors, people, sometimes even politicians, and they speak about the necessity to develop neurosurgery in the country. This foundation was the main support for the Marrakesh World Congress we organized in 2005. And it allowed us between 2001 and 2008 to build a national center for neurosciences with all technology needed for neurosurgery, with our first gamma knife URIF unit, which was the first one in Africa at that time. You see this national center for neurosciences. And another important quality of this center is that we succeeded to have it as a private, non-profit management. Thanks to an agreement, our foundation signed with the University Hospital and with the Ministry of Public Health, which of course is now working to sustain this activity of the foundation and the activity and the development of neurosurgery all over the countries. And this foundation also provided the great support for young African trainees in the WFNS Rabat Training Center by sponsoring the continuing medical education and by providing from time to time some additional scholarship. In addition, of course, to such foundation, we need in African countries for training and education to maintain this cooperation and this collaboration between either national institutions and international institutions, as you see here. All these national institutions are supporting the need for the training and the training itself. But these international institutions, and you see here the INI of Hanover, mentioned already by Professor Samii, and he mentioned also some of these young trainees he accepted, and he financed with a scholarship from the INI for short period of training, as I have said, to complete their training they have in their national centers. What was the evolution of African neurosurgery with all these efforts? You see here first the evolution of the national training programs. In 1998, we had only in Africa, among almost 50 countries, 5 countries who had a national training center. 4 of them were in North Africa and South Africa. In 2016, in a second survey we performed, we had 21 African countries with national training centers, and 15 of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. This is great progress in 2 decades, thanks to this program. And thanks again, Professor Samii. I don't know how I can find a way to thank you, because no one did what you did or done what you did for Africa and for training and education in Africa. Of course, we had now 4 regional training centers. And thanks to these training centers, look this progress. At the end of the century, we had 79 neurosurgeons in sub-Saharan Africa. Today, the number of the neurosurgeons in all the continent increased 3 times in 2 decades. From 565, they were in 2016, 1,727 neurosurgeons. In sub-Saharan Africa, the number increased 4.7 times, almost 5 times, from 79 neurosurgeons. They were in 2016, 369 neurosurgeons. The ratio moved from 1 neurosurgeon for 8 million to 1 neurosurgeon for 2,600,000. Of course, it's not enough, but it's very important. And this encouraged us to look quite far, to look the perspective to 2030 for Africa. If we follow just the rate of increasing we had now in the last decade, 4.7, we will have in 2030 in sub-Saharan Africa 1,697 neurosurgeons, with a ratio of 1 neurosurgeon for 730 population. But we are expecting to have more training centers and to increase the capacity of training. So we are expecting not only to increase 4.7 times, but to increase at least 7 times the number we have today. So in 2030, we will have in sub-Saharan Africa 2,583 neurosurgeons. And in all Africa, we are expecting to have, sorry, the number we have here, more than 5,000 neurosurgeons in Africa, with a ratio of 1 neurosurgeon for 346,000 people. The population of Africa in 2030 will be around 1,800,000,000 population. So thank you, Professor Samii, for having said that the future of neurosurgery in Africa is bright. More than 5,000 neurosurgeons. So I think that if we succeed to implement and succeed in this strategy in 2030, we will reach the wish of all of us, the wish of Professor Samii and late Professor Kanno, and then the wish of the World Federation to have 1 world, 1 neurosurgery. Again, all of you who wish to have more details on this evolution of African neurosurgery, this book, Emerging Neurosurgery in Africa, you can have it online, is available online, free of charge, of course, on this link. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Shibin?
Thank you very much, Professor Khamlichi and Professor Samii again. Thank you for your very ambitious plan for training the neurosurgeons in the African continent. So actually, ACNS also can help in training the new neurosurgeons. Is it correct, Professor Kato?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thank you so much, Professor Khamlichi. The wonderful talk. And also, you are a soul of the African neurosurgeon, I think. You're a pioneer of the neurosurgeon in Africa, I think. So when the first visit the Africa, I think it was really, really very far from United States situation or European situation of the neurosurgical educational activity. So I think it's great, amazing by Professor Samii and Professor Khamlichi. You did a great job because establishment of the African education is very, very difficult, I think. So, but you made it. And also still it's on the way, I think. But sometimes I visit some country in Africa, but it advanced a lot comparing with the last 10, 20 years. My congratulations. Thank you very much for your great lectures. And also, just I want to ask the young doctors, because they have so many questions to Giant. Is it okay if you're allowed? So maybe the first, Dr. Liu.
Thank you, Professor Kato. Thank you, Professor Madjid, Samii, and Professor Khamlichi for very nice and inspiring talk from both of you. And what I learned from the lecture today is your endless spirit and support. Want to look neurosurgery to grow beyond your own comfort zone and beyond your own boundary, and want to see neurosurgery to develop in terms of equity rather than equality in the world, and the effort to train more neurosurgeons for the benefit of the whole mankind is something that I think all of us, the young people, should learn from you, and we hope to continue getting such a wonderful lecture from both of you. And what importantly, I find the importance of having a sustainable neurosurgery services are more important than we just looking towards a technology which are very expensive, and that is very important. I remember one of the talk by Professor Samii that I attended, looking at how he utilized what is necessary and not as a luxury in neurosurgery. Thank you for both Professor, and thank you, Professor Kato, for this opportunity. Thank you.
So maybe next, Dr. Abdeslam.
Hello, Professor Kato. Hello, Professor Samii. Hello, Professor Khamlichi. Thank you for this very encouraging lecture and inspiring lecture. And I must say that if we look forward, it is only by standing on the shoulders of giants. You have created a platform which all people around the world should follow and make it their aim to train neurosurgeons all over the world, so that there is no country where neurosurgery is not available. Let's start from the basic level and then go to the highest level. Let's start with teaching them the basic procedures, the basic anatomy, and then go to the highest level. And I'm sure we can all do it, as we have seen Professor Samii and Professor Khamlichi, and now Professor Kato, as they are spreading their education all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And maybe Dr. Sachin? Sachin is with us. Sachin? Yes, please.
Yes. So first of all, thank you very much, Professor Yoko Kato and Dr. Balamurugan and Dr. Bingzu for organizing this wonderful webinar on the memory of Professor Tetsuo Kanno. I've met Professor Tetsuo Kanno only once in my life. His last visit to India for Neurological Society of India. So I'm Dr. Sachin. I'm the chair of ACNS Young Neurosurgeon Committee. And with that role, I wanted to ask both the mentors that, first of all, thank you both the Professor Madjid Samii and Professor Khamlichi for a wonderful webinar. And your journey of your life is an exemplary and inspiring for each and every young neurosurgeon. But with the role I have, I would like to ask both of you that it's a very hypothetical question, but I'm sure you can definitely put it in some way that will be one more inspiring thought for the all young neurosurgeon. I would like to ask both of you that if, let's say, if God gives you a chance to turn back 50 years and restart your journey again, would there any changes you will make in your journey, or do you think any mistakes you've done which the next generation of young neurosurgeons should be avoiding or should not do, or just any inspiring message you want to give for the young neurosurgeons? Thank you, Professor.
Professor Samii, please. Please, unmute, please.
It is, of course, a very philosophical questions, and then it needs to be explained that there are this question has many aspects that has to be considered if you want to answer really completely. But in general, my advice to young people is always, which is also dependent on the intelligence of young people, that that they have to find their way of future. How they find the way of future is because today we have, unfortunately, due to the media or social media, that they receive so many fake news and fake education, which shining like a light, and the young people are then directed in their life when they follow that. Because in my personal experience, I have seen many doctors who didn't come to our education program, and they saw only some, I would say, extraordinary, very exciting work, and say, I have to go to do that because I want to be better than the people are in the past. And they have lost their time, 5-10 years, and then they realize they are on the wrong way. And this is probably one of the most important facts that that the young people should always, when they want to make a decision to have 3, 4, 5 ways to go, please ask your most experienced teacher who you trust. He is very honest, and ask him, is that way really the right way that I have to go? And if he say, don't go the way, this way is not very correct for the future, go the other way, because in young age, people can be could be misdirected. And I have people who become professor even. After 10 years, they came to me and said, Professor Samii, I did one mistake in my life. At that time, I have decided to do this. I didn't follow your advice, and I did something else. And now I am sorry that I have lost so many time. And, you know, in neurosurgery, for education, first, as we heard before, we have a basic education. this basic education is generally is absolutely not distributed so that everybody can learn it. But if you want to make something very special, then you need really an honest, absolutely, I would say, talented teacher that they will show you the way. And the way, he is gone by himself. And you have seen that. And this is very, very important. That and the other thing which I am always telling to the student and young people, and say, look, many people say, how you get your energy to do all the things? I think this is also a question in your question, one of the aspects of your question. The answer is, keep your mind clean. Please write this in a sentence, put in your room. Keep your mind clean. What it means? Clean means whatever you do, try to do your best. Whatever you do, don't hurt the other people. Never try to reach something with destroying the other people, but standing on your personal work and abilities and whatever you do. And those people who believe they can reach something with destroying other people, this is a poison go to the brain and remain under the end of the brain. And this is, I think, the best advice I can give to all young people, that to remain in your brain absolutely clean and always honest and have the same face in front of everybody you are staying. Don't believe that if you are very nice to some people, but you turn yourself to other people and try to destroy the other people. This is not the way of young people to reach really highest level of honesty and also in profession. I think I can talk at least over 1 hour, 2 hours about this aspect. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. Professor Khamlichi, please.
What can I add to what our master Professor Samii has said already? This is a great experience, and this is the reality of our professional evolution. If we lose the basic knowledge, and if we immerse our brain in false occupations and problems, we can never do what we should do in neurosurgery. I think I would like just to add something which is particular to our places in developing countries. And Professor Samii knows that very well, and many times I heard him also pointing out this aspect. What I would like to say to the young neurosurgeons is not to want to earn so much money and very quickly, so quickly. This is something which is in general, one who has such a goal and priority from the beginning, I think it's very difficult for him to go away and to have the opportunity in his career to reach this level of people we would like to have, able to innovate, to educate, and to help the others. This aspect is very, very important in our places. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I would like
Please.
to mention that
Yes,
what
please.
Professor Khamlichi said. If you have in your life two ways, one way make you rich with money, the other way make you rich in knowledge. Please never follow the way to, because the rich in money, you can lose it from one day to the others. Rich in your brain, remain, this is the best bank which existing, has never any problem for disaster of changing the thing. This is that what Professor Khamlichi said. I am happy, my dear Abdeslam, that you mentioned this point. Well, this is very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samii and Dr. Khamlichi. And maybe there one more, Dr. Sharon from Malaysia, the lady neurosurgeon. Please.
So good day to everyone. I'm Sharon Theophilus, the woman in neurosurgery for ASEAN Asian chair. Today, of course, we are the memorial for Professor Tetsuo Kanno, I think was very well done, because in a way we are actually thinking and keeping him in our memory with all the establishment of neurosurgery and the education through the many years, like how Professor Madjid Samii said, more than 50 years. And I think this establishment has given us an opportunity for the future. And it's something that I think we all can look back and be very proud of, because you've given us the pathway, Professor Samii and Professor Khamlichi, and also Professor Kato. I think if you do not give us, the young neurosurgeons and the upcoming neurosurgeons, the opportunities to have education, to have a chance in the future, I think a lot of things will just end as it is. I think we can see in the world today, a lot of it is, you can see that a lot of it is coming to a standstill because of sometimes a little bit of our own greediness and things like that, but stinginess and things like that. But I think it's so great to have people like you who are ever willing to share with us everything in your lives, and not being at all thinking about what you want to keep for yourself, but giving everything to us. And like Prof Samii said just now, I think that is the most important thing. The gift you give is the gift to give your students, and your students carry on your legacy. That is something that can never be exchanged. And that is something that should keep all of us in the future and remind us that we give our legacy to our students and they carry on for generations. Thank you very much, Professor Samii, Professor Khamlichi, and Professor Kato.
Thanks so much, Sharon. And before the closing remark by Dr. Shubin, I want to say thank you again, Professor Samii and Professor Khamlichi. Both I admire, and also maybe the late Professor Kanno, that he may listen your two very important message to the young neurosurgeon, I think, because he always loves both of you, just like elder brother and the younger brothers. Thank you very much for today's nice lectures for both of you. So I give it to Shubin, please.
Thank you, Professor Kato. And Professor Kanno is a very have a great achievement in setting the ACNS, and he is a real pioneer in Asia. Professor Samii and Professor Khamlichi, thank you both. And today we have more than 1,000 audience watched this presentation. So you are a huge star. Thank you again. Yeah.
Thank you, Shubin.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we want to close?
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that more than 2 hours lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Professor.
much.